The movie opens with a United Nations negotiator, Edward Douglas, and two of his colleagues who are drifting in the middle of the Java Sea. Turns out they have been sailing across the water for several days after surviving a plane crash. One day, the three friends get into a scuffle for the last bottle of precious water. As the fight intensifies, Edward's two friends take out their knives and stab each other before falling into the water. Shortly after, their blood attracts a nearby shark, who then devours them as its food. Following this incident, the lone surviving Edward continues floating in the water for the next few days without any food or water. He is almost on the brink of dying due to extreme hunger and weakness, but fortunately, he comes across a passing boat one day. Upon being rescued, Edward is treated by a veterinarian, Dr. Montgomery, in the boat. After a few days of recovery, Edward is finally able to talk. The first thing he asks is his whereabouts, to which Montgomery informs him that he's on a seafaring vessel called the Ombak Panari. Edward then tries to get up to contact his organization, but Montgomery tells him to keep resting because he's still dehydrated. He also tells him that the boat has no radio, but he promises to pay the captain to take him to Timor. However, when they arrive at Montgomery's destination, referred to as Moreau's island, he instead advises Edward to come along, assuring that he can use the radio on the island. After Edward agrees, Montgomery loads a cage full of rabbits off the boat before heading towards his destination. He leads Edward to his farmhouse, where he first unloads a shipment of rabbits at a pen. He then grabs one of them and kills it for Edward's meal. This one's name is Peter. Peter's dead now. You're going to eat Peter. Following this, Montgomery takes him to the main house and excuses himself for a minute. Edward then looks around the certificates hanging on the walls and notices Dr. Moreau's name on them. He quickly recognizes the doctor as a Nobel Prize-winning geneticist who escaped to an island 17 years ago in order to conduct his research. Just then, Edward hears music and looks outside, only to find a girl dancing. This piques his interest, so he walks up to her and strikes up a conversation. After a brief introduction, he learns that the girl's name is Aissa and that she was brought to this island by her father, who is none other than Dr. Moreau. But before they can converse further, Montgomery returns and turns him away from her. He then leads Edward to the guest room upstairs. On the way, Edward initiates a discussion on how Moreau vanished after becoming obsessed with his animal research, but Montgomery doesn't make any comments on this. As soon as they enter the guest room, Montgomery locks Edward inside, claiming that it's for his own safety. But as the night falls, Edward manages to unlock the door via a pocket knife and make his way out. After wandering around the house for a while, he hears a strange, moaning cry emanating from nearby. It goes. Curious, he follows the source of the sound and ends up in a laboratory facility. Inside, he finds an array of medical equipment, incubation chambers, and liquid-filled cylinders containing what appear to be developing fetuses. Despite being in a confused state, he continues to walk towards the crying sound. Soon after, he witnesses a startling sight: a female human llama mutant giving birth, with several doctors attending to the delivery. I'd have gone with human emu, but Dr. Moreau probably knows what he's doing. Suddenly, Edward's presence is noticed by one of the male doctors, who peels back his face mask to reveal that he is also a human-animal hybrid. Terrified, Edward runs away from the scene, but he is chased by the hybrids. Not long after, he comes across Aissa, who offers to show him the way out of the island under the condition that he will never speak anything against her father. Following this, she leads him to the seashore, but there are mutant guards stationed who spot them. In a bid to evade capture, Aissa leads him deeper into the forest, where they come across several mutant creatures as well as a mutilated body of the rabbit. At one point, they stumble upon another mutant creature who appears to be friendlier than the others. He introduces himself as Assassimon. Dr. Moreau has been watching Digimon, who agrees to help them. He then takes them to a safe place that turns out to be the village of the mutants. He further guides them to a basement, where he introduces them to the Sayer of the Law, a goat-human hybrid. Edward is shocked to see his physical characteristics: large, curled horns growing from his head, and hoof-like hands. And of course, he's the leader. He's the goat. The Sayer preaches the idea of being human instead of animalistic, in terms of practicing manners, restraint, and discipline. Before Edward can comprehend the ongoing situation, Moreau appears, who is apparently worshipped and referred to as the Father by the mutants. Montgomery also shows up with the Father and holds Edward at gunpoint, making him scared. However, Moreau doesn't want to frighten him, so he orders Montgomery to hand over the gun to Edward. As soon as he receives the weapon, Edward panics panickingly fires it in the air, which disturbs the other creatures in the surrounding area. Seeing this, Moreau presses a remote button and controls their actions. Here, we learn that Moreau keeps the hybrids subjugated by using a remote-controlled electrical implant surgically placed at birth under their skin. It's one of the few methods of security he has implemented against his creations. Moreau then calmly reassures a shocked Edward that he won't be harmed. After this, Edward is brought back to the main house, where Moreau introduces his 4 children, Wagdy, Azazello, Emling, and Aissa. He's almost as creative with names as Elon Musk. He then proceeds to explain his genetic experiment. He fused human DNA into animals in search of a higher being, supposedly incapable of harm. The existing beast folk are imperfect, but Moreau claims to be very close to the desired results. Edward is hesitant to accept what he's doing and asserts that it's completely unethical and illegal. Later, Edward is invited to dine with Moreau and his children. During this, Azazello serves his father a plate of food with a half-eaten rabbit. This disgusts the apparent pacifistic Moreau, as he strictly forbids meat eating. At the same time, Aissa brings up the mutilated rabbit which she saw earlier. According to her, it was killed by a leopard-human hybrid, Lo Mai. Hearing this, Moreau decides to carry out a trial the very next day and suggests to Edward that he attend it as well. But before the sun rises, Edward tries to flee the island via a boat. However, his efforts are thwarted by humanoid rats that house the entire boat. The scene then cuts to the trial, during which the father gathers all of his creatures outdoors. He begins the trial by reminding the laws of the island, and then claims that someone has breached them. Sensing that he has been caught, Lo Mai violently charges towards Moreau, but the latter somehow manages to subdue him with his remote. Despite being knocked down, the leopard hybrid still tries to attack the father. Seeing this, Azazello mercilessly guns down the creature, much to the shock of all in attendance. Moreau chastises him for his rash action, after which he orders him to arrange a proper funeral for the fallen hybrid. Lo Mai's body is then cremated publicly, but it is not disposed of immediately. A short while later, a human hyena called Hyena Swine comes to grieve his friend. He says. While inspecting the charred remains, he notices a strange object embedded in Lo Mai's arm bone, the control implant. He then feels for the same implant on his own body, so he subsequently digs it out and removes it while roaring loudly in pain. With this realization, he vows no more pain and intends to spread the word to all the other mutants. In the next scene, Montgomery is seen injecting the mutant with some kind of drug. Intrigued, Edward asks about the same, to which Montgomery reveals that in addition to the implanted chip, the animals are controlled through regular drugging that prevents them from retrogressing. During this process, Hyena Swine refuses to get the dose administered. When Montgomery tries to persuade him, the latter shows him his removed implanted chip, which freaks him out. As a result, he quickly dispatches the other mutants after the hyena. They chase him through the woods, but aren't able to capture him. Later that evening, Edward tries to contact the outside world with the help of Emling, but soon after, Montgomery interrupts them and sabotages the radio, enlisting Edward's help in finding the hyena instead. In the meantime, Aissa goes to talk to her father as she is worried about her physical regression. She shows how her canine teeth are becoming fangs, her fingernails getting sharper, and her pupils appearing more like a cat's. Regardless, her father reassures her that she's beautiful the way she is, and that she doesn't need to worry about it. The same midnight, Hyena Swine and his fellow mutants, who are also now free of implants, break into the main compound and sneak into Moreau's living room. There, they confront Moreau and demand the reason why they aren't fully human. The father, who is unaware about the removal of the implant, casually tries to comfort the seemingly distraught creatures. However, they instead get angry and even reject the law. Sensing the imminent danger, Moreau grabs his remote and presses the button repeatedly, but to no effect. Hyena Swine then shows him the removed chip before they all launch their attack and kill the father. Edward happens to witness this from a distance and immediately fires a gunshot, scaring the group off. In the aftermath, Moreau's body is burnt down, while his children, except for Azazello, grieve. Azazello thought his daddy was a douchebag. Amidst this emotional moment, Edward approaches the weeping Aissa and attempts to console her. She tells him that she's getting transformed and seeks his help to retrieve a serum from the lab to prevent the same. Meanwhile, Azazello steals Montgomery's handgun and goes to join Hyena Swine's faction, who are planning to take over the island. First of all, they set the only boat on fire, ensuring that no one can escape. escape. In this process, they're approached by Azazello, who offers to take them to the island's armory section under a condition that they help him remove the implant. Afterwards, Edward goes to the lab, only to find the place in complete disarray. He also sees Montgomery, who is gone insane. Edward asks for the serum, but Montgomery walks off after claiming that he's destroyed all of it. Now that he's alone in the lab, Edward looks around the facility. In an unexpected turn of events, he finds samples and a file with his name on them. Upon going through it, he learns a shocking revelation. Moreau was planning to use his DNA to stop Aissa's regression permanently, completing his experiments. On the other hand, the insane Montgomery sits in the former doctor's throne. He talks as if he's a king and promotes hedonism among the mutants. Just then, Azazello arrives at the scene and guns down Montgomery. Hyena Swine's group also walks in and they take the mutants hostage. Back in the lab, Aissa approaches Edward, who then reveals the ultimate goal of her father. However, their conversation is abruptly interrupted by Azazello and his gang, who immediately charge towards them. The gang members capture Edward, while Azazello beats up Aissa. He hangs her with the help of ropes, which results in her death. He then drags Edward to Hyena Swine, who praises his work. But, unexpectedly, he guns Azazello down, having outlived his usefulness. Later, Hyena Swine forces Edward to accept that he's the new god of the island. Amidst the torture, Edward comes up with a new idea. He tells the hyena to become god number 1 by killing all of his gang members. Easily persuaded, Hyena Swine turns around and shoots down all of his supporters. But, while he's distracted, Emling triggers an explosion that causes him to lose his gun. Taking this opportunity, Edward quickly retrieves the gun and holds the hyena at gunpoint. Finding himself outnumbered and defenseless, Hyena Swine retreats into the burning building, where he burns himself alive in anguish and despair. With the threat finally neutralized, Edward now prepares to depart on a makeshift raft. The Sayer of the Law, a sassy Mon, and several other peaceful-minded mutants see him off on the shoreline. Before departing, Edward offers to return with professional scientists and doctors who can create a serum to prevent their regression. However, the Sayer asserts that they don't want any more professionals, that they simply want to return to their natural state of being and eventually end their creator's work. In the final scene, clips of various human wars and conflicts are shown as Edward reflects on the comparable savagery that can emerge in humans. The movie ends as he claims to have left the island in fear and that mankind is the true animal. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.